Hey guys, welcome back to another video. And today what I'm going to do is a little bit different or the same depending on how you look at it of a video. I've already done one, I guess, similar to this, but it's just one video where I did the top 10 favorite beat 'em ups. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to list my top 10 favorite shmups or shoot 'em ups of all time. These span a variety of systems, generations. Uh, so these really cover the gamut of shmups, vertical, horizontal ones. So it's definitely a nice variety of shmups. I think these are definitely my top 10, I would say, of shmups. There's a lot of really great ones, and I actually have here some honorable mentions, but I have a top 10, and this was basically inspired by one of my newer um, fans, you want to say. I was actually a fan of his first, if you want to be technical. He has a channel. His name is Man Cave Collectibles, and I've been chatting on Instagram a lot lately. He's more of a toy collector, but he's starting to dabble in video games, and we started talking about it. And yeah, he basically suggested, he's like, you have this vast knowledge of video games. Why don't you do some videos that are almost for newbies getting into the hobby? And I was like, it's not a bad idea. I mean, there's a lot of channels that do like real deep dives into game collecting, but something for newbies that are just getting into the hobby, it's not a bad idea, something to tackle. And shmups are definitely one of the most collectible types of video games, and also some of the most expensive by far. These are definitely pricey games in a pricey genre, but a big part of it is due to the fact that these are great games. So, that's where it comes from. But before I get into the list, I'm gonna give five honorable mentions. I'm not gonna go too deep into any of them, but these are also excellent shmups and some of my favorites, but just missed the top 10. So I'm gonna give you five. First one is Blazing Lasers on the TurboGrafx 16. R-Type 3, this came out on the Game Boy Advance, but originally on the Super Nintendo. Einhander for the PlayStation 1. Gigawing 2 for the Dreamcast. And Power Strike for the Sega Master System. And like I said, these are all pricey games. I mean, given this genre, unfortunately, there's just no way around it. Luckily for me, I've avoided another pricey genre in video game collecting, which is RPGs. I really have no desire for RPGs. I don't particularly like RPGs. I don't like the nature of them. I just can't get into them. Never have been able to. Only ones I've ever really played are Final Fantasy VII and some of the Phantasy Star games, but that's really it. But shmups, I'm definitely all about, always have been. So, without further ado, sorry for all the rambling. I'm almost 4 minutes into this and I haven't even started the list. So, number 10 on this list is Ghostblade HD. Now, this one is originally a game that came out as a homebrew on the Dreamcast, but it was an excellent homebrew, and it was actually ported over to the PlayStation Network, and you can actually get it on the PlayStation Network, I believe still on the PS4. And Play Asia did a limited release, a physical release for these. Play Asia games, even though they're Japanese, I guess, they still play on a PS4, so they're not region locked. I believe there was only maybe 1,500 to 2,000 copies of this one, and it's about $100 on eBay right now. But it's a really good shmup. You get to pick from 3 large ships. There's 5 gigantic levels. There's awesome power-ups, huge satisfying explosions. The game reminds me a little bit of the Giga Wing series, but a little more refined because it's essentially newer. So that's why I give it a little bit of a leg up on Giga Wing. So at number 10, Ghostblade. Number 9 is a classic, which came out originally, I believe, in the arcades and was ported over at the time to the Genesis. And the Genesis version is probably, I guess, the most famous one, I would say. And that is Forgotten Worlds. Forgotten Worlds is a really, really fun game. Like I said, it was famous on the Genesis, but it's been released, I believe, on I believe the first Capcom collection that was on the PlayStation 2 and on the Xbox, and it's also on one of the PSP Capcom collections. It's a two-player game, and I've heard it described this way, and I think it's a dead-on description. It's that it's Contra with jetpacks. The two main characters are basically similar to the two main characters in Contra. It's that fast-paced action, and it has a very unique control scheme in it, which is a little hard to explain. It takes a little bit to get used to, but it's a lot of fun and it's unique. Makes this game stand out. A little bit like Sidearms, if anyone's played that. It has huge bosses, gorgeous stages. Also, one of the things is when you kill enemies, you get money, and you use that money to buy weapons and gear. So there's a little bit of a strategy element to it there, where you either want to increase your weapons or do you want to increase your defense with the gear. So there's some strategy that goes into it. Overall, it's a really, really fun shmup. I used to play it a ton back in the day on the Genesis. So number 8 is game it comes from a very venerable line of games of shmups, and that is R-Type Delta. This is, in my opinion, the best R-Type game. It's only available, I believe, on the PlayStation 1. Maybe it's on the PlayStation Store, but it came out on the PlayStation 1 and no other systems. It's great graphics in this one. It's classic R-Type gameplay. It's aesthetically a beautiful game. It handles particularly well. That's one of the really strong points of the game. It has tons of different weapons, massive enemies, a great soundtrack, but it's brutally difficult. It is a brutal game, so you would have to have a lot of patience for it. I think if the game was not as brutally hard, it may have been a little higher actually on this list, but it's still a great, great game. Next is a game which I actually had to get a bootleg of because this game is so expensive. It's a game that's on the Japanese Saturn, and it's called Hyperduel. This is a really expensive game on the Japanese Saturn. I mean, we're talking close to $1,000 game, so I had to get a bootleg of it. But the bootlegs work on the Saturn. I believe if you have the action replay card, which I do because I also use that to play imports. That's one thing about the Saturn, the American Saturn. If you have the action replay cart, you can play import games on the Saturn, which is pretty useful. So, anyways, Hyperduel is it's a really good shooter. Reminds me a little bit of Forgotten Worlds, where where there's like almost like 2 players going on at the same time, and the second player you can use is like a mech. There's really cool power-ups in the game. It's a really good paced, fun game. The fact that it's so mech heavy, I think, is why I like this game. I love mech games. I love like all the mech games on like the Genesis. Oh my gosh, why am I forgetting their names right now? They had a remake that came out on the PS4. it's going to come to me as soon as I finish this video. But be that as it may, it's a really, really fun game. Shooters tend to, while they might look beautiful and the soundtracks might be great, which like R-Type Delta is a perfect example of that. But because it's so difficult, like it takes down the fun level a little bit. This one is just fun. This is a really, really enjoyable game. Next game is a game that was made by Treasure. Treasure, as you'll see in the rest of my list, made some phenomenal games. This is number 6. This game was released on the Dreamcast as an import. You need if you have a American Dreamcast, there's a swap disc that you can use to play Dreamcast import games. So that's what I use. You basically buy the swap disc, you put it in, you get the machine running, you take it out, then you put in the import game, and there's instructions with it exactly at what moments that you have to do it. But be that as it may, this is a game that came out on the Dreamcast originally. It was ported over to the American GameCube. That's where a lot of people have played it. And it's also on the PlayStation Network, and most recently on the Nintendo Switch. You can buy this on the Switch or Nintendo Store, I think for $10. And it is phenomenal treasure shoot 'em up game, and it is Ikaruga. And it's one of the most amazing looking shooters. It's a great challenge, but it's not impossible. The environments in this game is what really make it stand out, I think. It does this, the stages do this really unique 3D movements, which it kind of shift the focus of the game a little bit, and it's just a lot of fun to do. And it has a really unique play style where you can swap the bullets that you're using from black to white, and at the same time, depending on the bullets that you choose to use in that any given moment, you can absorb black or white bullets that are coming at you. So depending on if the enemy is shooting a particular style of bullet at you, you can swap weapons and you'll be able to absorb it and not get killed as easily, essentially. So it has like that element to it as well, which is really unique. It makes for some interesting strategies. So Ikaruga, it's a really fun, fast-paced game. Also a great soundtrack. So that is number 6. I just have the list written in front of me to make things simple for me. At number 5, let's see, I'll put this over here. This is a game that also came out on the Japanese Saturn. I actually had it on the Japanese Saturn, and I sold it because it was expensive, and I was like, well, I could use the money to buy different stuff since I can get it on the PlayStation Network. And then it came out as a really cool collector set through Limited Run Games, and I immediately jumped on it. It was actually available first through Play Asia in a physical copy, so I bought that, and I had that for a while. And then when the game came out through Limited Run Games, I grabbed that and sold off the Play Asia version, and I always had it just downloaded on my PS4, so I always had it one way or the other. And like I said, I used to have the Saturn version, but the game is, and I actually never opened this, I'm just using it as a collectible at this point, and it's a really cool special edition set. It's Battle Gaia. Really nice special edition set. It comes with soundtrack, posters, all sorts of stuff in here. And Battle Gaia is, in a lot of people's eyes, is actually one of the best shmups of all time. It's a lot of people say it's actually the best you shoot 'em up ever. The game has lots of choices where you can start out with 4 different ships. Each ship is different, has its strengths and weaknesses. It has really awesome power-ups. It's fast-paced. The stages are over these like large sprawling cityscapes, over large armies. You're just bombarding everything. It's one of the cool things about shmups is like if you get a lot of satisfaction of just blowing stuff up, and this one you get a lot of satisfaction of just blowing things up. It controls really well. One of the most best parts of this game is the soundtrack. Soundtrack is just out of this world. I believe this actually comes with a vinyl soundtrack, if I'm not mistaken. I really should open it at some point. I'm never going to get rid of this, but I don't know. I'm one of those collectors. I love keeping things in sealed in box, so especially if it's a collectible. I mean, I have the ability to play this game, so I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell. But like I said, it has just an amazing soundtrack. Just the awesome power ups. One of the unique things about this game with the power ups is that the more power ups you get, the game becomes actually more difficult. So while you can blow more stuff up and it's like really cool and satisfying, the game actually becomes harder. So if you don't have as many power ups, the game is actually not as challenging. So it's kind of a unique way to play the game. So that's one of the really neat things about it. But Battle Gaia, one of the greatest shooters of all time, hands down. I don't think anybody will argue with me on that. Next is a game that came out on I believe only the PS2, and I think it's the only system that you can get it on, which is unfortunate because it's pricey. I haven't looked up the price on this that recently, but the last time I did, it's probably in the 60 to 70 range. Maybe it's a little more now, so it's not like crazy. I mean, it's not like Hyperduel on the Saturn, which is $1,000 game. But my guess right now, it's somewhere in the $50 to $100 range. It's this is probably one of my favorite games on the PlayStation 2, and that is Gradius 5. The Gradius series is obviously famous for shooters. There's a lot of them. The Gradius collection on the PSP is actually a great collection to grab if you want a good introduction to the series. But Gradius 5 is the best game of the series. It's another game that was developed by Treasure that did Ikaruga. It's to say that this game is graphically beautiful would be an understatement in disservice to the adjective beautiful. Honestly, this is a phenomenal looking game. It's one of the best looking shooters I've ever played. It has lots of really cool weapons, lots of power ups, speed ups. The level design is just incredible, incredibly intricate. The backgrounds are astonishing. It has a really great techno soundtrack. Reminds me a little bit of if any of you guys have played, I'm sure you have, the Wipeout series on the PlayStation with that kind of techno-ish soundtrack. It's similar to that, I think. The stages and the environments are just so precisely done, and you have to like navigate them carefully. That adds a layer of challenge to it, but it's not impossible. It's definitely a difficult game, but it's not an impossible game. And I kind of like that, where you have to like be really precise in your movements, and you have to be careful, but you're also shooting at things. So you got a couple things going on at the same time, and just the visuals and the sound track in this game are just incredible. Given that it's a relatively reasonably priced shooter compared to a lot of these, this would definitely be one to get, and especially since most people do have a PlayStation 2 or the ability to play PlayStation 2 games. So I would definitely recommend Gradius 5. And just shows the back a little bit. All right, so that was number 4. Number 3, this one I feel like is more of a sentimental favorite to me. As I grew up on it, I played this game just so much as a kid. It came out on the Genesis. It was one of my favorite Genesis titles. And the game is Thunder Force 3. Now, this was an arcade game, and also was ported over to the Super Nintendo as Thunder Spirits. Please, please, please never play Thunder Spirits. It is a complete disservice to this game. It's a horrible, horrible port of Thunder Force 3. play Thunder Force 3, pay the extra money for Thunder Force 3. This is one that's also pricey. I think it's in the $100 to $150 range at this point. It is a pricey game, but it is just an incredible game. Graphics in this game, for the Genesis especially, are just astonishing. Just bright, vibrant colors. One of the neat things about this game is that you can actually pick which levels you want to start at. So you actually can basically play all the levels that you want, and you can decide how you want to play the game. It has really cool power ups for speeding up your ship. Uh, so many different array of weapons that you can use. The level designs are just amazing in this game. Um, the big boss fights at the end are just they just seem epic because these bosses are just these huge, colorful bosses that basically go from top to bottom of the screen. The fact that the Genesis was able to pull this off was amazing. If this game was like done now exactly the same way, if it was on like the Switch or something, it would be like it's a good game. Part of the allure of this game is the fact that it did what it did on the Genesis. And like I said, it was a game that I grew up on, that I loved playing as a kid. So a lot of it is sentimental value. There was a Thunder Force 4, which was actually called Lightning Force, which came out several years after Thunder Force 3, which came out in 1990. And Lightning Force, some people actually believe and say is a better game. I just could never get into it the same way as I did Thunder Force 3. That's just my preference. So Thunder Force 3 is at number 3. And number 2 is another Japanese Saturn game. The Japanese Saturn is so loaded with shooters, but man, are they expensive. This is actually the only one that the authentic one that I have in my collection. Hyperduel, like I said, I needed to get as a bootleg, and I have a couple other bootlegs, which are just games that are not in my top 10. But this game, just like Battle Gaia, which is also on the Saturn, a lot of people say and think that this is the best shooter of all time, and this is again another treasure game. So 3 treasure games in the top 5 basically, and it is Radiant Silvergun. Radiant Silvergun, while Gradius 5 is a horizontal shooter, Radiant Silvergun is a vertical top-down shooter, but it reminds me of Gradius 5 in that it's a game where you have to carefully navigate the stages, where you can't just go blasting. You have to be very careful and precise in the stages because you have to navigate corners and do all sorts of stuff. Radiant Silvergun is another game with just an absolutely incredible soundtrack. This Japanese Saturn, I can't say enough about it as far as shooters are concerned. Like, just wow. But again, pricey. So, if this is a genre of games you want to get into, prepare to open your wallet. So that's all I can say. But Radiant Silvergun, again, one of the most unique things about this game, which makes it stand out from other shooters, is that you don't really get power ups and you don't get different weapons. You start out with 7 weapons, and you have to learn the game in each situation to figure out which weapon applies best to any given circumstance or boss or situation. So you can use any of the weapons in any of them, but there's certain ones that work best in any given situation. So it just adds that layer of like learning and replayability to the game, which I really think is awesome. It's just an amazing game. Like I said, a lot of people think that Radiant Silvergun and Battle Gaia are actually 2 of the best shooters of all time, and they're both in my top 5, but neither one is my number 1. And number 1, and again, this might be a sentimental favorite, and it is a great game. I think for me, it's number 1. I don't know if it'd be number 1 on a lot of people's lists, but to me, it is. I mean, it's probably number 1 on a lot of. It's probably in people's top lists, but I don't know if it'd be number 1. And that is Musha on the Genesis. Again, talking about expensive games, this is one of the most expensive games on the Genesis. I've had this copy for going on 10, 15 years. I had it as a kid. Stupidly, I traded it in to probably get that year's Madden or something. Who knows? But this game, I got it on originally on a whim because I played. Where is it here? Something I showed earlier at a buddy's house who had a TurboGrafx 16 at the time. Blazing Lasers. Now they're actually in the same family of games, which is the Elite family of games. They're all kind of uh, related, essentially. You have Blazing Lasers. You actually this game, Power Strike, and Power Strike 2 on the Sega Master System are both in the same family of games. Space Megaforce on the Super Nintendo is in the same family of games. Gunnak on the original Nintendo is in the same family of games. But Musha, I think, is the best one of them all. Musha, again, for being on the Genesis, was so ahead of its time, and it pushed the Genesis technically to it made it and did things which no other Genesis games really were able to do. So who knows how they were able to pull it off. They actually basically had Mode 7 effects, which the Genesis wasn't supposed to do Mode 7, but Musha did, which is moving things from the foreground into the background and back and forth. And somehow Musha pulled it off, and it's just incredible. It's an unbelievable 16-bit soundtrack, so it has that like 16-bit Genesis kind of twang to it. If you play the Genesis, you'll know exactly what I mean. But it's just an unbelievable soundtrack. It's up there with some of the best soundtracks of the Genesis, such as Revenge of Shinobi, Streets of Rage, games of that nature. Again, graphically, this is an amazing game. The levels are diverse. Each level is completely different than the one before it. The controls are just beautiful and spot on. That's one of the best things about this game. Because if the controls are just a little off in a shooter where it takes a lot of precision, and if they're just a little bit floaty or anything like that, it really takes away from the experience. And Musha, just the controls are just spot on, and and pretty much all these games are, but Musha just always stood out in my head as just being just perfect when it came to controls. It has an incredible power up system where you collect like these pellets to kind of build up your weapons. And also a cool thing is that you can get like these little tiny ships that go on your side, and you can arrange them in different formations. So again, it gives you a little bit of a strategy where which way you want these weapons to shoot, either behind you, in front of you, to the sides. They actually can go in circles. So it gives you a lot of different variety of the gameplay. Um, it has a forgiving difficulty, which, like I've said before, shooters tend to be sometimes difficult to a fault. Musha is difficult, but not impossible. So it helps add to the fun and replay value of the game. One of the interesting things is that if it lets you build up your weapons, and the hits are a little forgiving in this game, but once you die, you lose your weapons. And and depending on which part of the game you're at, I mean, you could be toast. So it's difficult from that standpoint, but again, it's not impossible. Musha is just an unbelievable game. Just so much fun. It's expensive at this point. I want to say it runs probably about $600-700. So, but luckily it's on the Genesis, so there's probably a million ways to emulate it for anybody that wants to play it. So that is my top 10 shooters, shmups as they're called by people in the industry. So I hope you guys liked the video. Please comment, like, subscribe. Let me know which games in the genre that you guys enjoy. What did I miss? What do you disagree with me on? What do you agree with me on? Get the conversation kind of rolling in this. So I'm going to do some other videos along these lines. Going to get a little more maybe heavy or slant a little to the video games. I'll still be doing pickups and stuff like that, but kind of got my video game itch going with these a bit. So I'll be doing that. And like I said, given the suggestion from my buddy there, Man Cave Collectibles, I'll treat it like this could be a channel for newbies just getting into the hobby and help them discover games that they normally wouldn't be able to discover. So, and talk about games that if you're just getting into the Nintendo or the Genesis, what are the games that you should first go out and buy, or stuff like that, the staple titles. And those are the kind of videos that which I think I'm gonna start putting out, since I have this huge collection. So may as well talk about it and share my knowledge and experience. So till next time, guys, take care and have a good one.